Katya, how did you find carnivore?
Hey, well, just a summation from the first time that we were together, which was, I think, around September the 1st. I was a raw vegan pioneer in Australia. I had around 20 years of that. Five of those years were fruitarian, which means that it was just predominantly more fruit than salads and whatnot. I found carnivore around 218, the end of 218, when I come to end stage veganism, as I call it. My health was suffering terribly. It doesn't matter what I did, I couldn't get my self back to a place of equilibrium. Anxiety was high. All these things were happening to me. My teeth were really, deteriorating, all kinds of things. And so I then decided to change and did carnivore on and off. Um, Took out a lot of the plants, obviously, but the brainwashing was very intense. It took me quite a while to disentangle from that. So I would go back to having a few more plants, even the ones that I knew were low oxalate, because I started to look more into that. And I had quite a very heavy detox from oxalates too, which really made me think that it might be the meat that was causing it. But anyway, I pretty much stuck to that for a few years and would have perhaps cucumber, if anything, and avocado comes in. Still very low, um, what would you say, ketogenic more. Um, and then I started to have a little bit more plants when I was in a relationship with someone who was very plant based. And so I had a few, and of course, then they start to cause me more problems, the bloating, because I'd find that I'd want more. They weren't having meat, but of course I convinced them that it was important. So they did start to have more meat. But again, I started to have a bit more variety of vegetables. And that's when I had some problems. And then I actually decided some of the raw vegan treats, which were, they were also high in sugar. So my health, I thought, was okay, but obviously I couldn't tolerate it because I had done a lot of damage to my ability to regulate insulin. So I started to get quite a lot of bladder problems about 2 years ago, UTIs and things that were going on, having investigations, and this went along. And then it was in June, or sort of around May, I went and had a diagnosis finally. And so the long and short of it, around June 10th, I was told that they had found cancer cells in my bladder tumor, and which was quite shocking in a way. But I then made my way to, well, I've been looking at your channel and came across a lovely fellow who didn't live too far from me. And I went to see him mainly for acupuncture because I was a fan of that. And he had reversed stage 4 cancer through strict carnivore. And of course, once he knew that I had just had this diagnosis, he said, "You have to go back on strict carnivore." And of course, I was up for everything then. I just knew that I would put everything into it to bring my body back to balance and to eradicate this, because I kind of knew that it was more of a metabolic thing. I think I mentioned to you last time, I never owned the fact that I had cancer. I was never fearful. I was never frightened. I never thought about it. I just concentrated on getting my health well. So the first few weeks, I kind of slipped back into it strict, and it was high fat. Because I also looked at some of the latest research, particularly with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, around the now findings that of evidence, proof that a ketogenic diet does halt the progression of cancer, and it stops their fuel sources. And so I started to look at some more research, and it was just amazing what was being discovered now, and a lot of the myths around cancer and what the causations was in diet, which of course none of this is spoken about in the medical industry. They tell you to eat whatever you want, and of course their diets, when you're in there, are all full of sugar as well. So that was wonderful because that confirmed that I'm on the right path. And so the high fat was great. It enabled me to put on 8 pounds, and I have maintained that weight. And I've never been this weight for 4 or 5 years. So it was remarkable. I just couldn't get enough into me at first. I was eating so much fat, people couldn't believe it. It was meals that looked like they'd feed 4 people, but I'd be wolfing them down. And now what's happened is when we first spoke, I was booked to have a cystoscope done on October the 1st, so it was around a month after, to ascertain whether this tumour was still there, what was going on. So okay, before we launch into that, I just thought I might say too, as I spoke to you before, it was only about a week ago. I've been still staying strict and high fat because I love it, satiating, and of course I'm getting healthier and healthier and feeling fantastic. But I used to have a lot of matcha lattes before this diagnosis, and it was a daily morning thing for me. And that was the only thing I'd have that was processed. It was a coconut milk that's very popular here, plant milk. And so I made one of those. I thought, I'm going to just see what happens. I like to use my body as a laboratory. So I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to have a comparison. So I did that, and it was okay. It didn't taste like it used to. It wasn't as enticing, really. I thought, I don't know if I really want to do this again, and had that grassy taste as matcha does. But the thing is, I had been having coffee with the strict carnivore, and I did find sometimes my cortisol, I want to keep that down because with the cancer diagnosis, I needed to be zen as much as possible. And it certainly was. It allowed me to sleep. But it was a different feeling with matcha. It was kind of like a focused sort of thing without the cortisol. So that was my reasoning at the time, but that proved to be wrong. Anyway, so I did it the next day. The first day I did get a coating on my tongue after a couple of hours, and I thought, wow, this is my stomach saying it's not quite happy. The microbiome's changing, because I've had a clear tongue, which you do, right? And so I thought, oh, all right. And so the next day I had one, and I don't know if I like this coating on my tongue. My teeth even don't feel like I don't like it. But you know what? 2 hours later, this searing pain started happening in my left hand on the fleshy part of the thumb here. And I'd had this inflammation for a few years because I'd broken this wrist, the right wrist, about 6 years ago. And of course, I'm right-handed, so I was determined to be able to dress myself, do all the things I could do with the right hand, and I was trying to do it with the left. I was opening jars and all these things. I was overusing it continually, but for quite a few months. And so it did get inflamed. And anyway, when I went strict carnivore, totally disappeared. And now it's come back with a vengeance. Well, it did. And I thought, wow, that was it. That was it. That was the deal. I'm sticking to this. And, I didn't feel bad about or guilty because, this is how we get a comparison. And a lot of people may go back and try. If it's a plant or something, it could be that all of a sudden sets off achy joints again, or, all the wonderful things they're experiencing without any carbohydrates, So that's what occurred, Anyway, I want to mention that as well. And just to pick up again on the veganism aspect, because really it's not in my life, but obviously I've started a YouTube channel, and there's 3 things I'd like to help people with, is to get them away from this veganism thing and unshackle themselves and also get them onto zero carb, obviously, and because obviously you want to share the incredible results you've had. And of course, I'm going to speak about the cancer tumour that disappeared in 8 weeks. All right. So, all right. So I want to bring up this example about veganism and how it totally destroys people's nervous systems. Usually with the first year of veganism, people get quite excited with the changes that happen, especially if they've been on a SAD diet. It's quite remarkable. The body will go through 4 seasons. But a vegan diet is a cleansing diet, and that's all it's good for, cleansing out the body, all right? And that's okay for a year, but it's the second year when people start to have problems, and the problems occur with your nervous system. A healthy, functioning central nervous system is the key to having an alert brain, active brain, a calm nervous system. But this is what happens. Veganism attacks that and destroys. That's the first thing that happens. People say they start getting more anxiety. Different things start happening with their ability to think, all kinds of stuff. But this is where the central nervous system's been affected. So I came across this YouTube channel that I was fascinated by, and it was about this prison, high risk prison that houses 6,000 criminals, gangs from El Salvador, that was established 2 years ago by the president that was installed. And here we are, we've got all these men just totally covered in tattoos from the various gangs they belong to. They used to always be apart from each other if they came across each other, you know. But anyway, they're housed in this absolutely mind-boggling security that they've created to house these people. And the first year, these men, a lot of them are very young, but they're strapping young men. They're very muscular, you know, on them as, they have a good, healthy diet. So the thing that captivated me was not only are they're deprived of anything that's comfort. They don't even have a blanket or any covering on them when they sleep. They've got lights on 24/7. They're sleeping on metal shelving almost, and they're in a cell with 80 other members that, you know, they used to absolutely, you know, want to murder if they were together on the streets, you know. So I thought, this is interesting. How do they get their minds and bodies like this? You know, it's quite interesting. And of course, that's all designed to break them in some sense, you know, and deprive them of these comforts. So, but what really captured me, as I said, was when the person who was in there filming and allowed to come in and see this was when their meals were coming around. Now, the only thing they were allowed, and one thing that the warden did say, they are not allowed one bit of meat, no meat whatsoever. And it was almost when he said that, it was a statement of, okay, that's a comfort, that's a luxury or something. We'll take it out. So they're deprived, right? So they're only having tortillas, beans, rice, pasta, a few eggs, not all the time, and a little bit of cream. And of course, knowing what I know about the veganism, vegetarianism, the first year they probably were okay. You know, they went on a bit of a cleansing because of 2 years. They've been there for 2 years. Well, here are these men that look like they were in a concentration camp or something. They were half the size as what they were. They've lost all their muscle. They've got sunken in temples here, which, you know, is very indicative of long-term veganism. You lose this. And they're docile and just compliant. So people thinking it's a way of depriving the comfort, but it's actually to stop them getting any testosterone, their body to make that, so that they can, you know, create some hostility or, you know, between each other.
It's almost like Kellogg is running the prison.
It is indeed. And it was so obvious. And these men, you know, they can't even do many exercises, well, you know, but it's a way of control and keeping them, you know, contained. And if they didn't know that, of course they know that, the authorities know that, they wouldn't dare give them a bit of meat because, you know, these men would just rebel in some way. So I thought that was a fabulous example. And other people have agreed with me. And I thought, well, you know, if you've come across anyone who's hardcore vegan, send them over just to have a look at the time period within 2 years of how these men look now compared to what they were when they first came in. They're a shell of themselves, you know, as far as the musculature that they're holding on their body, you know. I thought that's very indicative. All right, now we're now going on to my cancer diagnosis that occurred in June the 10th, going strict carnivore. So when I last spoke to you, I was probably around the 3-month mark. Okay, so we're on the 4. For that minor hiccup there, I'm now back on it again, just filling myself up with lots of fat. So October the 1st was when I had an appointment to go back into theatre. We discussed that's when you wanted to have me back on again, to have a cystoscope. Now, a cystoscope is a camera that's inserted into the urethra. And look, to be honest with you, I was in two minds because I've got a couple of really great friends that I can, you know, debrief and talk about. And I knew I just knew I didn't have one bit of cancer in my body after about the 8-week mark, right? Why? Because none of the symptoms were there anymore, and I just was feeling fabulous. I thought, whereas for the last, say, year, I'd been struggling to keep weight on. I couldn't get past 8 stone. I was starting to get this fatigue, which got worse probably at the beginning of the year, for the last 6 months before this diagnosis. Fatigue, just an acidic taste in my mouth all the time. So I was hesitant, and I thought, well, why am I doing this? And I thought, well, probably because I want an actual medical confirmation of what I already know to be true, right? And the friends said to me, well, why do you need that? Do you need to actually go back in? And the thing that was really hesitant about, and this is what I didn't make clear in the previous video, which I want to now, because people had asked me about the clotting that I was experiencing after I had this biopsy. The biopsy was done towards the end of May, and then I got 2 weeks later the result of that. But of course, in that period I started to get a lot of clotting. Now, what had occurred, I had a hematoma. So the surgeon who performed that had said to me that I had a larger than normal surface area of bladder. It had been stretched. Why I said that, he said, obviously the blood vessels are being damaged, and this is what a hematoma is. It's injury to the small blood vessels. So this is what had occurred. They really scraped off the whole surface, tumour around there. And so that was what the cause of the clotting was. It was so bad I couldn't pass urine, which I mentioned in the previous video. So I was so hesitant to go through that again. And so that was my concern. So sure enough, 3 days before the procedure that I'm scheduled to have on October the 1st, I get a phone call from the first surgeon because I spoke to two. What happened was I had 5 people come after me. So watch out, tell you what happens. So the first one's a surgeon, and he said, look, I'm just checking in. You're due to have this, to go into theatre and have a cystoscope. And I said, yes. On October the 1st, the Wednesday. I think he called me because it was a weekend. It might have been the Thursday, Friday. Anyway, I said yes. And he said, look, have you got any questions? I mean, you can speak to the surgeon before you actually go in, but any question? And I said, well, look, you've got notes there. I've got a bit of hesitancy about this hematoma that I had. I really don't want to go back into hospital for 4 years with uncontrollable bleeding, and clotting. And he just listened and he said, oh, okay, I understand your concerns. And I said, well, can you make a note of that? Because he said, no, we're just doing the cystoscope. And I said, okay, all right, that made me feel okay. And he said, I'll just take the notes and pass them on. Now, my experience with people taking notes the last time I was in hospital sent up red flags because these notes don't get passed on. Whoever's doing these procedures, which I'll explain a bit more. So I was a bit hesitant, and I thought, okay. And what had happened was previously I'd been able to get to the hospital. I had friends pick me up. There was no one available to take me and pick me up because if you have a general anaesthetic here, they won't let you go home. So I thought, okay. And because I still hadn't made up my mind, I told him. So, I don't know if I can get anyone to pick me up. Maybe I'll have to reschedule or something. So at this point, I hadn't made the decision. So, okay, so he hangs up, and then about 10 minutes later, I get this call from this theatre nurse who says she's just had the information passed on to her that I'm a bit hesitant because I can't get someone to pick me up. She said, well, we've got a community bus. We'll be able to do that. We can pick you up and make sure this happens. And I'm like, okay. And so I said to her, look, I don't know. I might need to reschedule because I'm a bit far away from where this community bus and everything. I've still got this hesitancy. And all of a sudden, I just thought, no, bugger it. What do I really want to do? I don't want them poking around in my urethra. My urethra is very happy at the moment because, to be honest with you, this BCG installation that I did was 6 introductory ones, right? And they then want you to go on to have 3 twice weekly, 3 times a week, these installations. And they're hard to handle. Not everyone can do it. it burns a bit. It's hard. They dig around the urethra. It's not a pleasant thing, believe me. So I was going, I have to go through that again. So I still hadn't made my mind up. And then all of a sudden I thought, this came to me, just have the courage. Just tell them. All right. Don't do it. You know you're well. You know who you are. You've healed it. You don't have any symptoms, right? So I just said, look, I might just reschedule. So next day, I get another call from another surgeon. And he says, oh, look, I've just had this information, you're a bit hesitant about coming in and rescheduling. And I said, yes. And I said, look, I don't want to have a biopsy at all. Can I do a written statement or something? And the friend of mine said, they probably won't pass it on, yeah. So he said, oh, no, look, we might need to do a biopsy. This is the second surgeon. And I thought, wow, more contradictory information. And I thought, wow, so you can't guarantee that I won't have a biopsy even though I don't want one. And he said, no. And I thought, so that was it. That was it. So I said, look, you know what? I got something to tell you. I feel so well. I've put on 8 pounds. I don't have any sensation of any awareness of anything going on my bladder. In fact, I can drink a glass of water before bed now. And I only get up once. I know people my age who don't have any problem with their bladder, like a cancer diagnosis, and they get up more than I do. So I'm getting up once, and the flow is forceful. It just keeps going and going. It's like this gushing fountain. I love it. Whereas before, I'd have pain. Just the letdown reflex to urinate would bring me shocking pain. And then, of course, I'd feel like I hadn't emptied my bladder and I'd want to go again. And this was going on sometimes 10 times a night. Yeah, 10 times minimum a night I was getting up. So we know how that just broke me down to the immune system. So I thought, oh, bugger it, I know I'm well. I know I am well. So I thought, okay, I told him, and I thought, okay, so next thing, the theatre nurse rings me up because she was going to tell me the time, even though I said to her I might not need to reschedule. And she said, so are you telling us that you're not going to pay us any attention anymore? And I thought, what a strange statement. What a strange phrase to say to me. You're not going to pay me any attention. It wasn't until later on that it occurred to me, those who capture your attention capture you. Right? And I thought, wow. So I then said to her, look, I've decided I'm not going to do this. I am well. I really am. There's nothing that is telling me that I need to have some kind of investigation or something to tell me I'm well. I don't really want to go through this because they can't guarantee I won't have a biopsy, and I don't want to go through that experience again. So I thought that'll be the end of it. Okay, they've got that. I'm not coming. End. So the next day, they sent the bloodhound out. The previous video was they turned on me, the vegans. Well, now the medical system, right? So this is a woman who actually is the head nurse of urology and oncology, right? He was actually performing the installations, doing it for me when I was having the first 6 introductory ones. And every time I'd go back, I'd say, gee, I felt great, and that was when my body had started to shift because I was strict carnivore. It didn't take long. Like I said, with all the fat I was having in a few weeks, it's strange, I'm not feeding these cells, And so I would say to her, is there anybody else that you speak to who's not just taking the treatment that you offer, who's doing other things? Oh, she said, oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've heard everything. And I said, have you heard people do carnivore? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, what have you heard? And she said, oh, they love to think that's wonderful. And she said, you name it, I've heard it. And she said, no, you're going to be really good. You've got a very different attitude to everybody else. There's not one person who doesn't come in here complaining how painful it is. They can't go on anymore. They've got genital irritation going on, bacteria. And I thought, because the carnivore has got rid of all that, there's no bacteria for anything to start. She couldn't believe it. She said, you'll probably be one of the ones who'll come through this really well. So now I'm faced with this same woman, and it was like the script, the whole flip of her personality. It was like she's now been sent and she's reading this script, right? So she says, I just got a message that you've decided to stop treatment. And I just had this shudder go through me because I knew that this woman is hardcore. She's old school nurse. She is hard.
Did you ever watch Prisoner? Did you ever watch Prisoner?
Yeah, I
She
did.
sounds like the freak.
Oh, you've got no idea. So she says to me, you can't just stop treatment. You are a cancer patient. You can't do that. And I said, but I'd feel well. She said, you can't feel well after only 6 treatments. This is only the introductory. She said, we can't let you slip through the system. I was like, seriously, I was shaking. It was like, she said, you're going to end up in the chemo ward and you're going to lose your bladder. And I said, no, I won't. And then I started with the critical and logical responses. And I said, look, you know very well it's a metabolic disease because I've had this conversation with you. And she said, cancer is not a joke. She said, you can have no, because I launched into how well I feel. I don't have anything. I don't have any symptoms. I've put on half a stone and it won't go. Doesn't matter if one day I eat less, the food I'm eating, it stays. It's like I've reached my level of homeostasis for me. And then I said to her, she said, you've got to go into theatre and have this cystoscope. And I said, well, they can't guarantee me that they're not going to do a biopsy. She said, well, of course not. She said, they're not just going to do a cystoscope and then have you come back in again. That's 2 times. It's a waste of their time. And I thought, wow. And I said, cancer cells can be detected in urine. Is that correct? She said, yes. She said, but you need a different procedure for that. Oh, here we go, the division. You want to have this test done, you have to go to this person, this specialist. This is a whole divisive language of the cancer industry. Anyway, I said to her, no. I said, look, I've put on all this weight and I feel great. I'm same story. I don't have any pain. She said, you could still have cancer and have no symptoms. And I thought, this sounds like something that was going on 5 years ago with this deadly respiratory thing going around and people not having any symptoms. And I thought, when I grew up and I was going to doctors, you'd only go if your body had alerted you with its intelligence that something's amiss. That's the only time you would go to a doctor. Why would you go when there's nothing broken? Why would you go? Your body's intelligence is going to alert you. So I'm telling her all this, totally dismissed it. It was like I was speaking to a brick wall. She just kept up this fear campaign. If you don't have this done, it's going to go and you'll have Mets appearing everywhere else. All right, so more fear. There's more. It's hijacking your nervous system. This is the thing. If they hijack your nervous system, they can get you to buckle. And I just thought, how many people buckle under this kind of, it's gaslighting to a sense, because whatever I'd say to her, she'd tell me the opposite. And I said, that doesn't make sense. And she hadn't come across anyone who's had a bit of knowledge, but I'd come back with her with this and go, but that doesn't make sense. Totally overrode it and kept going. You'll be in the chemo ward. Is that where you want to be? And then she said to me, so what if you have a second opinion? Is that what you want? Okay, maybe. And she said, we'll send you to a hospital that's closer to you because I'm on the border of New South Wales and Queensland. So I was going to the hospital in Queensland. And then I said to her, and so what are they going to do? She said, they'll do a cystoscope. And I said, will they do a biopsy? She said they could. I said, well, I'm not going to go along with that. So she was thinking, because I'm going to go to another hospital, people's logical thinking isn't going to, they think they're going to just get a different diagnosis, but they're going to do the same procedure. Girlfriend said to me, look, they have to do that. That's just their script. That's all they know. So then she said to me, oh, so you don't want us to bother you anymore? And I said, no. And she said, well, I'm going to have to send all this to your GP, which I don't. The only reason I went was because of the UTIs. Otherwise, I wouldn't go near a doctor, and that costs obviously to get the investigations done for the bladder. And of course, it's due diligence is what they have to follow up their end to say that, they did what they were meant to do. And if I decide to pull the plug, well, can't have any comebacks on them because, but I just thought, wow, this is so brutal. So I got a very good insight into this and how it goes on. And it took, look, honestly, Dave, it took me a lot of courage, but to walk away. And I can see how it does. But the people who do it, they know who they are and they know if their body is well. And I've got someone on the other end trying to tell me I'm not well. I didn't want to hear that. And I was like, I've got rosy cheeks, I've got color back in my face. Um, that's another thing as well. And the other thing that I've noticed the longer I go on zero carb is, which is a great thing for women as they get older, a lot of women start getting like a crepey appearance on their lower legs, sometimes on their arms, and they really don't like it. And so whatever moisturizers they're putting on, it doesn't have any effect because it's happening from the inside out. So the more fat I eat, the smoother my skin gets. The whole crepiness disappeared as well. I think the skin changes have been phenomenal, just been brilliant. And I know a lot of women lose their hair first on zero carb, which I did a little. But sometimes I have some CMOS, which is zero carb, and they're doing some fabulous research with CMOS. No, there's no carbs in it, as far as interrupting the cells, cancer cells as well. They're playing a part in interrupting that. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. But there's the story. And the interesting thing is, since I've started my YouTube channel, I get quite a few people with cancer asking me what I did. How did I do this? Because, I mean, to say that you had a tumor disappear, and I know for sure, because as each day goes by now, as I've hit the 4-month mark, I'm actually going to another level of health. Like I said, I've got so much vitality. I'm playing pickleball, vigorous sport, because that's really essential too with the cancer diagnosis, because cancer is also about stagnation. You've got to get things moving in your mind, moving action. A lot of people are just sitting around more. They're so inactive today. So all these things play a part, as well as the diet, obviously. And I said, look, I've got so much stamina. My lung capacity is just brilliant. I'm playing people half my age and they're huffing and puffing, and I don't have any of that going on. It's actually getting better. And I was a smoker way back. That just blows my mind, because the more I've gone into it, it actually is like telling me that the mucosa in the wall, the integrity of the lungs is just getting stronger. And now another thing, because I was a colon therapist, and once I first went zero carb, I prefer that term, to be honest, than carnivore. The first time around, I noticed my bowel movements were better, and the whole way that you have a poo is totally different to when you're eating tons of plants. When you're having lots of plants, it's more of this just release, right? But when I went strict carnivore the first time around, I did go through a period where I was a little bit constipated, and I was like, and then I learned that I put more fat in, and that helped. But you feel the urge to go to the toilet on a much deeper level. It's like the peristalsis, which is that wave-like motion that propels feces along, becomes stronger. And so what I figured, that the musculature, which is, the colon wall, they're all muscle, it becomes stronger. So it propels it along, and the bowel movements are totally different, right? They come through, and it's not this just gushing of fiber coming out. So I figured that this is going on in my bladder, because not only have I, that I'm not getting up through the night, but through the day, I can drink tons of water, and I don't even feel to go through the day. Now, that's getting better over the last 3 weeks. So that tells me that the bladder pouch, the muscle, now is getting tighter and stronger and able to hold a far greater quantity of urine. Isn't that brilliant? How brilliant is that? So I'm glad I had that knowledge, because I just joined the dots, and that would apply with any internal organ, right? And this is what I say to people too, if we're healing on the outside and you watch how incredible it is to have a wound heal, right? And your body just goes about doing it. Well, of course it can do it on the inside as well. You just have to give it the right conditions. You've got to provide the environment. You've got to provide the right fuel for it, So you understand that, meat and fat is the proper fuel, because, you're not thinking of food, as we know. So that was those benefits have been brilliant. So I'm just excited to see the longer I go, and I certainly want to assist people to get them back. And I'm actually planning some workshops and retreats next year, just in the local area, just to give people this information now, because there is so much now proof and evidence, especially, with Ken Berry and Chafee and all these people who've just really gone in and got the science now, that unequivocally says that you take out the carbs and you're not going to just heal cancer, you'll heal more than a dozen other things, so serious chronic illnesses, as your channel shows. And I just love sending people to your channel. I just think it's, I hope you did. Did you do a catalogue of people so they can look up and, something that they're suffering with, and they can go, oh, okay, there's a bunch of people there who've got the same thing. Maybe I can talk to them.
I do have to get better at that, but anyone that's looking for a particular type of recovery, feel free to email me, and I'll find them for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience, and to walk away from the cancer industry, and man, they don't like it. But it takes courage, but it also, the linchpin is, you have to know who you are. You have to know and trust that you're being made, your body is made, like I said, to heal itself. You've just got to give it the right ingredients, the right conditions. Again, but the thing too with zero carb, why it's so brilliant for cancer, is it also puts people in that zen place. And I think I heard you talk about another woman about that. So what happens with a cancer diagnosis? People just go into terror and absolute fear. They can't sleep. Their whole mind just will not get out that they could die. And my understanding is, the more I go into this, that's what actually causes these other metastases to happen, because now they've got more fear and more terror than they've ever had. And the people I've talked with are just so terrorized. And the interesting thing is, the people who've had cancer, I'll say to them, I told them what happened to me, and they'll go, the funny thing is, about a year before or 2 years, I had a feeling before I actually got told verbally that this is what I have. I have cancer. I had a feeling a year before, a few months before, something was amiss. Something was wrong. I was getting tired all the time. There's something wrong. So your body, in its intelligence, again, is alerting you to the fact that people say, God, I had that feeling, but I ignored it. So, when you can trust in your body, if you can get a handle on this before it gets really, people just can completely ignore these things. And they can also get to a point where they perhaps used to having a lower level of health. But anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's fabulous. It really is great. And I love the fact you've got a lot of people who've reversed cancers. I mean, I didn't expect that this was the way I was going to help people, but I think I mentioned in the previous video that, I did make a bit of a pact at first with God, with my creator. I kind of said, look, okay, I know I've got the ability, it's been installed in me to heal, but I've got to speak about it, because I'd really held back. And now I feel, okay, I'm just going to speak my truth. And I've certainly been helping other people, and they're seeing some results too, just by making these small changes, taking the sugars out. And, any evidence we can get now to show people that the vegan diet vegetarian diets, it's incomplete. You're going to have deficiencies. You just take a vegetarian population, you can see they've got more macular degeneration, for instance. They have lower cholesterol. The whole system, pharmaceutical system, as you know, wants people to have low cholesterol, because their brains aren't going to function as well. It's all been designed that way. So if you've got the clear, logical now evidence to come back at them, I think it's easier to bring cognitive, if you like, thinking back into people who are vegan, because the brainwashing, as I said, is so intense. But now we've got all this great evidence, and we get people to just think critically, why you have to take supplements, everything, all of that, So that's what I'll be
Yeah.
doing, and helping people obviously get them onto zero carb. So it's great. And
That's fantastic.
yeah,
So how can people find you on YouTube?
well, now Unshackled Wisdom. So I go there, and I'll be uploading today's video, obviously, and Dave's is up there. The other one is on the playlist, but just as I said, so people know. To me, I'm unshackled. I've unshackled myself from the cult of veganism, and yeah, I'm now zero carb and shackled myself. I think it's brilliant. And of course, for cancer, people come to me, and I certainly want to help them in that way. So I've got plenty of videos. Well, a few that I've just started, but of course, I'll bring up more and more and more, covering quite a few things, but also, letting people just be aware and real. I'm very real. I'm very brutal, not brutal, but I'll tell the truth about the cancer industry and how the language does instill a lot of fear and terror into people. And once people are captured by that, they buckle and they literally give their power away. And this is what I want to encourage people to trust in themselves again. And, and see the results with zero carb, because the great thing about it, with a raw vegan diet, it usually takes a little while for people to get some good results. With zero carb, it doesn't take long at all. Would you agree with that, Dave? You've seen people
Yeah, I mean,
browns
people
pretty
start improving things in days.
in days, absolutely in days, sleep and all that. So that's another reason, like I said, with a cancer diagnosis, it gets you into that zen. The anxiety goes, well, like I said, you can be thinking of something anxious, but your body's not registering the cortisol spikes like it used to. I mean, this whole world at the moment has everybody distracted, and it's trying to hijack your nervous system. If they can get you to have your cortisol spiked so that you're in fight and flight all the time, it leads to confusion. You can't make good decisions for yourself. You're confused. That's how, this is how this realm is at the moment. And it's actually getting worse, obviously, with the devices and everything. So people's ability to focus is going. But that's another great thing with Zen Carb. Zero carb, I call it the Zen, Zen carb, is this ability to focus for longer periods of time without you being distracted. And like I said, keeping you in a calm state where you can watch people's dramas unfolding around you, but you're not really affected. That's priceless to me. And I think it's priceless for anyone who has some kind of chronic condition diagnosis, because the mind just runs amok, or can. And this just stubs it all out. Just
Right, right.
it goes to
And the
the
more
point.
you can
Yeah.
Yeah, the more you can kind of calm yourself down, get yourself out of a fight or flight mode, the better your immune system is gonna operate.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And look, the other thing, it's almost like a rejuvenation that happens. People think, how can you get rejuvenated on meat? It doesn't do the opposite. But I'm actually seeing it is. And like I said, my eyesight, my God, at night, my night vision, I was going to get some glasses. I don't need to do that now. The letters are all solid blocks, and I'm just in awe. I really am. And there was another one I listened to, and I think people can give up zero carb or carnivore if they have a couple of hiccups, but I honestly am saying to understand, particularly if you've been vegan, plant-based for a while, or even eating a processed diet, whatever, you need to stick at this for a long time, because I feel it goes deeper and deeper into the organs and the bones, and starts healing. I've got, same with me. I can play, like I said, pickleball. I can jump around. I'm playing with people half my age, but also things that were sore. People are having a lot of injuries, young people, and that knocks them out for ages. If I get a bruise now, the bruise just disappears in a couple of days. My healing is accelerated, and yet people just assume, as I said, that this is part of aging. And of course, they take on that belief, and they also just keep eating what they've been eating all their life. They don't feel a need to change. But you don't it's all about the quality of life. I mean, like I said, people know I'm 70 next year. I want to age in a really different way, and you can. It's possible, And I realise now, you take out the carbohydrates, and it is like a lease of life. And I know you've had tons of people on your channel saying the same thing. And there's probably a whole lot that won't ever go off it, you know. But I'd like to just say that if you've tried it and you're struggling, you know, and you've got cravings coming back, just push through, keep going, because it is kind of like a new month unfolds and something better happens and something better. Did that happen to you too, Dave? I'm sure. And people, you know, the longer they
Oh
go,
yeah.
they see more and more deeper sort of things happening for
And
them.
the longer you go, the better the results get, but also the longer you go, the less likely you are to go back.
Yes. And look, even if you do go off and try it, the results are sometimes 100 times worse than when you were having it before. It's such a shock to the system, and you get this rush, like you said, of pain and your joints coming back or whatever symptoms you were suffering with before. And like you said, it's just so clear that's the cause. I'm not going to why even bother, you know? And look, people say, look, you know, how do I go eating out now? And, you know, I've got this fabulous kitchen and all I'm doing is cooking meat in it and splashing fat around everywhere. And I thought, there was a time where I was putting on this apron that was plastic because I thought, oh, it didn't happen with all the fresh fruit and veggies. But, you know, the kitchen doesn't become the center now anymore. I have more time for all these creative things. And I love that. That to me is more precious. You know, I'm not taking away the fact that it's good to sit around and celebrate a meal together, but all my time is not spent in the kitchen, you know, cleaning up, chopping, grating, slicing, you know, just throw a steak on, you know. The other thing too, you were saying about the type of diet I have, I don't have chicken. I don't even have a desire for chicken. I do know that beef to me is you know, a nice fatty rump. Pork, fish, but again, wild caught salmon is the only thing I have wild caught. I won't have any of the farm stuff. And I'd also take a couple of drops of iodine too, which because again, you know, the soil, this, that, the other, it's been good. But for some reason, I just don't have any desire for chicken. I'm not saying to people, you know, start off with it. I did have chicken when I first started, but now it's just I don't desire it. And I do feel that beef gives me a lot more of a zen feeling.
So, Katya, I'll link to your YouTube channel in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing such good news with us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Dave, and I'm glad to report I feel fantastic. I feel better than I've felt in years. So, yeah, thank you, and it's been a pleasure.